guys, Triforce of Doom here, and today we're talking bosses. The big tests of strength that gauge just how much you've learned, and more often than not, have some sort of impact on the story. However, we're gonna start off with the end. That's right, we're talking about final bosses specifically. The thing I look for in my final bosses are challenge, intense and or epic atmosphere, and a very satisfying finish. No killing the guy with one shot of your pistol mid-monologue here. As usual, one per franchise and only games I've played. Also, if it wasn't already obvious, spoilers abound. With all that said, let's get started. One thing I love is when games have a fight where the enemy is using copied or corrupted versions of the skills you've been using the whole game. And one great example is the final boss of Sonic Colors, the Nega Wisp Armor. While it's not a rival-style fight like, say, Sonic vs. Shadow, the armor still makes use of abilities you've been using the whole game in the form of the Wisp color powers. Every single one of the Nega Wisp's attacks are based on one of the wisps you've been using. From the cyan laser, to the pink spikes, to even the blue cubes. The only one he doesn't use is the orange rocket. The announcer even says the wisp names as Eggman activates them. Pretty cool setup, so let's talk about how the fight is actually executed. Like a good chunk of the recent 3D Sonic fights, this fight is an auto-runner level that loops. Using the boost mechanic, you have to catch up to the armor while Eggman barrages you with the previously mentioned attacks. Once you do, you use the homing attack to go up an arm, then smack the cockpit in a really cool slow-mo shot. Doing so frees a wisp, and gives you an opportunity to boost into the stunned boss, freeing another one. Rinse and repeat with the attack patterns getting combination attacks and getting more frequent until you freed all of the wisp types. This type of formula makes for a cool variation on the Sonic standard of bosses having around 8 hits or so, with the wisps acting as a visual indicator of how close you are to winning. Cue
Unlimited colors! Laser! Drill! Spikes! Rocket! Hammer! Frenzy!
And Eggman flying off and into an even further part of space. With that whole fight set to an orchestral version of Reach for the Stars. Did I mention I love when games pull the remix the theme song card? Because I love when games pull the remix the theme song card. Overall, this fight is just a great mix of epic and fun, but I just got more of those categories from the later bosses. Speaking of epic, let's talk Platinum games. Not only does me playing more of their games make my soundtrack list sorely outdated, but goddamn, each and every one of these games I've played oozes the phrase holy shit. And one final boss that shows this well is Jubileus from Bayonetta. After a really fun boss fight against her father, Bayonetta is now tasked with fighting a straight up goddess inside a giant magic orb in space. Needless to say, fighting a goddess isn't easy, but that's par for the course for Platinum. This fight essentially comes in 4 types of phases, one of which repeats with increased attacks. The first type is your simple phase, working pretty much like any other fight in the game. Dodge the attacks, possibly time right to get witch time, and wreck house. During this, Jubileus will mainly attack with her tendrils equipped with either fire, ice, or lightning, and by just trying to punch you. Both attacks linger, letting you damage her. You can deal extra damage to the tendrils by punting mini Jubileus faces that show up via hitting the faces followed by finisher QTE. The repeat of the phase adds to turning you into Cereza for a few seconds, which is more annoying than anything, and a black hole. That last one will probably kill you more than any other attack since it's insta-death. The only reliable way to dodge this attack is to do a double jump into Crow Within at the last second since Beast Within's dash isn't fast enough. Fuck this attack! The second phase of the fight is what I call the Freeze Flame. Basically, an obstacle course through both a land of lava, then a land of ice so cold that it damages you to the touch. All you have to do is navigate the path that is safe and hit all the tendrils, then Jubileus' face. 2 face punches later, and you get to do a repeat of the first phase and a checkpoint. The next type is the Tornado. This phase is only slightly annoying due to some platform RNG spacing where you have to jump across platforms to hit the tendrils and her face while she shoots both lightning and tornadoes at you. The latter destroys the platform it hits. You can see where some of the RNG comes from. Thankfully, pits only damage you in this game and don't kill unless you're already low on health. After that is the Climax. With Jubileus Days, you constrict her and beat the shit out of her face and end it with one of the most satisfying finishers ever! The finisher in question? You punch her with a giant demon so hard her soul flies into the sun and burns from across the solar system! Sure, you have to move the soul so it doesn't collide with the planets, but it looks cool and is pretty easy to do. And need I repeat myself from earlier about the music? Honestly, aside from the standard that is platinum difficulty levels being a little more annoying here, this fight is really fun. But the frustration of those bullshit moves really hurts the fight in relation to the later entries. One should not make the insta-kill nigh impossible to dodge. And before you ask, I consider the destruction of the body its own thing as a catharsis verse. Next boss! We started with a glove, then added a second glove, then Tron overpowering the glove, and now the glove came back, and he has some new tricks. Allow me to introduce Master Core. While the fight does start with your standard Master and Crazy Hand duo with punches, missiles, the handshake of death, you know, the works, knock out about half of the HP count while at 8.0 or higher, and Master Hand starts to corrupt, prompting Crazy to get the fuck out of Dodge. Cue this black and purple thing swarming the screen and forming into what is known as Master Giant. This guy will swipe horizontally, and while the swipe won't hurt, the shockwave a half second later will. He can also summon electric orbs, then lift Final Destination into said orbs. He has some other attacks, but those are the two more notable ones. After beating him up without dying, he turns into the Master Beast, which, in my opinion, is where the real challenge starts due to its erratic and fast movement between various attacks like lunging from the background or just spawning an electric field on its body. After that is Master Edge, where it turns into 5 swords. Better hope you have good aerial game, because the only time the swords will even be close to touching ground is when they bunch up to prepare to fuck you up. After that is Master Shadow, basically a Ditto fight where your opponent has HP, and then finally, if you're playing the Wii U version, the Master Fortress, a gauntlet with 4 weak points as well as acid that kills at 100% or higher. After all of that, you have one last beatdown on the vulnerable core. The different phases really add to the epicness and difficulty of the classic fight, and I love it for both that and how each part's strategy is different. However, sometimes one simple fight can work better. For example... So, while Skyward Sword is no longer my favorite Zelda game, think Between Worlds and Breath of the Wild for that, it still has my favorite final boss of the series. If Ganondorf is the Prince of Darkness, Demise is king. Being the one who caused the whole Ganon constantly coming back thing in the first place, his fight is appropriately awesome and tough. The two of you are in a sort of water-sky dimension, which in execution is one of the simplest yet coolest boss arenas, much in the same vein Dark Link's in Ocarina was. As for the fight itself, a sword duel that can be a pretty good challenge, and it's this simplicity that makes it work. Hell, the only real difference in phases is, oh hey, I can do that Lightning Skyward Strike myself now. And you might not even realize you can do that the first time you play this fight. The whole challenge, much like the Girahim fights before, is knowing your swordplay and when to shield bash. Sure, not stunning him with lightning in the second phase can make the fight go on longer, but it's still completely possible to win. Hell, the guide I bought the same day as the game didn't even have that trick listed. The fact that it ends in only 2 finishers is also nice since it doesn't overstay its welcome as a result. The music is fittingly tense, which helps build the atmosphere, and again, it's a very satisfying sword duel against the Hyrule equivalent of Satan. I like. Speaking of Satan, let's have him shoot God in the goddamn face after beating up the Holy Grail. That's right, my representative for the Persona series is Persona 5's God of the Week, Yaldabaoth. Not only is this guy massive, he also has a fair bit of strategy involving the element system, which I always like in games with one. Now, I'm only talking about his final fight, not the Holy Grail phase. I consider the 2 separate battles. The fight starts off as a simple war of attrition, with you wailing on him with all your hopefully max tier spells, and him hitting you back with a single target almighty. After knocking out some HP from him, the main strategy of the fight appears: the Sins. As the fight progresses, he'll start summoning 4 different weapons that, alongside knowing spells of their base element, also know 1 or 2 of the 7 deadly sins each. These sins will give your party various statuses which can only go away via either the luck-based wake-up slap, or by just letting it pass. Lust is basically, don't do anything for a few turns, and Avarice is super hunger, both of which are fired by the gun. The Bell fires Vanity, which is the you are now weak to everything status from the Madarame fight back in the 2nd dungeon, and Envy, which makes the envious member attack a party member if said unafflicted member uses a support skill on anyone other than the afflicted. The sword uses Gluttony, which doubles SP consumption for 1 or 2 turns for everyone. And lastly, the book uses Pride, basically a counter, and Wrath, basically super rage. While Yaldabaoth is neutral to all elements, each arm reflects 2 of them. The gun reflects wind and, obviously, gun. The bell reflects fire and psi. The sword reflects melee and electricity. And the book repels ice and nuke. Hopefully, you've evolved your preferred party's personas, because then you can just go all out without worry due to the evolved personas nulling their main elements. Otherwise, heal and target wisely while trying to take out the arms fast, since each arm gets its own turn, and having up to 5 targets attacking at once is not recommended. Once you whittle him down enough, Yaldabaoth will say fuck this, and charge up Rays of Control, where if you either don't kill him or destroy the newly formed arms, which act as power conduits, will likely kill you if you didn't grind to near max levels. You get 2 turns to do this. My strategy being keep at least 2 of the arms at critical health when I get close to this point, since only the ones that were actually dead get healed, so I can essentially have the power in 1 turn. At this point, he'll repeat the attack every few turns until either party is dead, preferably him. Once you do so, you get the final blow by summoning Satanel and, as stated before, shooting Yaldabaoth in the goddamn face. Having so much meat to a turn-based battle, a very nice final boss song, even if I think Rivers in the Desert is a better song, and that very satisfying finisher, this fight is so satisfying after all the shit he's put you through. Alright, time to finally talk about what is easily my favorite indie game to date, Dust and Elysian Tale. With amazing art design, a beautiful fantasy soundtrack, and some of the most satisfying 2D combat ever, I love this game. And the emotion and power in the fight with Gaius is a great example for all of those aspects. While most of the 4 or 5 boss fights were okay, Gaius's just pays off the whole story climax with a bang. First off, the setting. Dust and the Moonblood Resistance are going all-out war towards Gaius's base in an active volcano. That's badass. Second, the music. Holy shit, it fits the fight so goddamn well, with the epic score meshing with the beautiful visuals nicely. and of course, the fight itself. After Dust and Gaius reaffirm their convictions, helped by the plot twist of just who Dust is and how Gaius truly believes his cause is just despite the contrary, Reed wants to wipe out a whole race, we get an awesome 4-phase fight, each one changing up the battle just enough. The first phase starts with you fighting Gaius and his 2 bodyguards in front of his throne, with him using various types of sword swipes. After knocking him through his throne, you then end up in a somewhat flat arena with some floating platforms. Now, he's backed up by the airships you had been suplexing in the areas leading up to Gaius, and he's now using dark magic explosion traps. You also now have some Moonblood supporting you against the random Gaius soldiers. After that, you go further down the volcano, with Gaius being flanked by his soldiers on the higher difficulties, and you have those nice handy bomb fruit to blow up their faces with! Lastly, you fall to the heart of the volcano with 3 platforms and a shit ton of lava. The way the arena changes with each phase combined with the simple yet effective moveset Gaius has, just shows how powerful he is. And considering how much he's built up throughout the game, that's a really good thing. Also helped by the fair but hard fight he puts up. To put it simply, that shop right before the fight, use it! Gaius tests everything you've learned about combat throughout the game, and he's not an easy professor. And I wouldn't have the fight be any other way. Also, fun fact, I ran into a soft lock glitch the first time I beat him that made the last cutscene not play. Worth kicking his ass twice in my opinion. What do you get when you take an ancient demon star thing, Bowser DNA, and Fafl's soul? You get my number 4 for the list, Dark Bowser. While I do like Dream Team more, I personally got a bit more enjoyment out of Dark Bowser than I did with Dreamy Bowser. And there's one very good reason. Remember how I said I love bosses that use your own attacks against you back in the Nega-Wisp segment? Yeah, that hits full force here, combined with a really cool idea for how the health counter for the boss works. First off, Dark's attacks. You have to counter his punches with your own, followed by a Shell Slam, counter Darkstar versions of your minions that are in a full-on minion stampede with each individual minion in the charge having a specific counter, Boulder Shrapnel, where you have to block some with your shell while also punching one into Dark's face to clog up the breath attack he's charging, and an attack where you have to either break or swing a cage enough so you don't get hit by what's essentially a Spirit Bomb. He only uses the Minion Barrage when you knock out 1000 HP, however, where that's when Fafl's Spirit revives him and makes him bigger. When it's your turn, punch his stomach, beat him in an inhale battle to swallow Dark Fafl, and cue the Rose getting the chance to beat the shit out of him for a few turns, with Fafl having his own attacks, and the standard practice of destroy X, Y, and Z to reveal the weak point that Mario and Luigi is so familiar with. Some attacks include spinning a Dark Energy Spear that you have to jump over multiple times, sending shockwaves down his arms that you have to hammer back, and the usual fuck you attack that you have to dodge by holding onto Starlow's feet that almost every late game boss has. Once you successfully deplete all of the core's HP, you win. Alongside all these attacks and strategies that are just satisfying to pull off correctly, you've also got a cool purple tornado backdrop at the top of Peach's castle for the arena, and what is easily one of my favorite final boss themes in any game with In the Final, which got put in Smash 4 to my absolute glee. Another thing I like is a slightly subtle theme that makes this even more of a mirror match. Both parties are Bowser with an assisting party inside him. Considering how Fafl has been a pain in the bros' sides since Superstar Saga, that theming fits his final appearance perfectly. And again, the idea of destroying a core that is constantly regenerating its armor is a concept I like, and this fight does that concept a whole lot of justice. So, those of you who saw my collab on Shadow Brony's channel probably saw this guy coming at some point. Cue the Techno Rock! Senator Stephen Armstrong. He was in Texas college football. He was in the Navy. He plans to make America great again. Is injected with nanomachines. And you just pissed him off. Cue what is easily the biggest mixture of frustrating and fun in any boss I've ever fought. And the best part? He doesn't have any cheap attacks unlike the other Platinum Games rep on the list. He has charge punches, shockwaves, hitting the ground so hard lava shoots out, and hitting you with pieces of Excelsis debris, which you can destroy for health packs. And by can, I mean you should always do that because holy shit, this guy is hard! All those attacks I just mentioned, plus some more he gets as you injure him, come at you fast. And he hits like a freight train made of adamantium. To put this in perspective, my recent replaying of Jubileus took me about 30 minutes raw. My recorded and edited playthrough of Rising had this guy as his own part for 42 minutes! Keep in mind that death montages are one of my signature edits. Honestly, the closest thing this guy gets to cheap is a part of the fight where you have to blade mode a weak point on his back while he heals himself. Botched your aim? Cue losing damn near half of your health via counter. However, that difficulty actually helps in this case since it feels like you earned the victory. Also, leading up to the actual fight is a bunch of really well shot scenes and scripted segments that lead to both awesome and funny moments that fits the tone perfectly. And of course, the atmosphere. You're in a crater formed from the Excelsis fight previous, while the song It Had to Be This Way plays. Did I mention Platinum made my soundtrack list outdated? Because holy shit was this game one of the reasons why. I like techno. I like rock. I love the way the game mixes the two. And of course, how you kill him in the finisher.
You stole my heart.
Oh, fucking come on, man.
So good. Time for me to talk about the series that has yet to have a game I haven't loved. Motherfucking Kirby. Those of you familiar with the series probably know how fucked up and or dark the final bosses can get. And there are a lot of good contenders, from O2 to Magalore to Sectonia to Dark Matter. However, I find the most recent main entry to have my favorite final boss of them all. Who wants to fight a sentient space station? So, after you kick Haltman's ass 6 ways from Sunday, his big project Stardream wakes up, takes over his mind, and proceeds to aim all of its weapons at Kirby and Planet Popstar. So, what does Kirby do? Does he grab an OP copy power of the week? Does he take the titular Robobot and try to Shadow of the Colossus this bitch? Ooh, I know! How about he uses the Robobot's copy scan to merge with the motherfucking Halberd? That's right, for the first time in Kirby history, you, the player, are in direct control of one of the most iconic ships in gaming. Now cue the Star Fox style gameplay of shooting the fuck out of a giant space station in the outer atmosphere, which is goddamn gorgeous by the way, while it fires everything it has, including its own body, at you. Your weapons? A repeating laser cannon that deals a lot of chip damage in seconds, the ability to absorb debris from attacks you destroyed, and firing them back for 3 different tiers of damage based on how much you store. You also have the classic reflecting dodge roll that games like Star Fox have. Fair warning, it doesn't block everything. However, once you beat that phase, you're only about a third of the way done. The thing you've been shooting proceeds to fuse with the entire Haltman base, covering most of the screen with its size, and the rest of the screen with the increased intensity in its attacks, using more powerful versions of the ones you already saw. Yes, even the RAM. It also teleports. Doesn't give you a lot of breathing room if you're not careful. Now, you may be wondering how a space station can increase scope more than what are basically this world's version of Satan. Well, the answer is simple. and the way it's revealed is amazingly done. You see, as you chip away at the second phase, the outer shell of the base will start to fall apart, showing the inside more and more as you damage it. And if you are familiar enough with Kirby lore, you'll probably recognize what you're fighting after the first few armor breaks as a goddamn Nova! AKA, that thing that had the power to grant wishes in Superstar and its Ultra remake, and is considered one of the most powerful beings on all of the Kirby universe. I went into Robobot completely blind, so my reaction to seeing this part of the boss was, oh shit. And once you chip away all of the second health meter, it is pissed. Cue the final phase, where it teleports right into your face, roars, and pulls you into some weird Nova dimension thing. Say hi to the final phase, which will be over after 5 attacks one way or another. To win, you have to maximize your Star Shot usage and make them count. For when the last knick-knack of death is done doing its thing, Star Dream will fire an insta-kill wall that will hit you. No ends, ifs, or buts. And you finish it off with a Kirby-powered... All of these mechanics, combined with the surprise plot twist, scenery, and the iconic Kirby soundtrack, makes for an awesome boss that would be number 1 if the next one wasn't equally as epic while also using its game's standard mechanics to its fullest. Oh wow, 3 Sakurai boss fights in one video. Dude isn't one of my favorite developers for nothing. As for who exactly is my number 1, you ever have that really smug guy you really want to punch in the face? Or in this case, shoot with a magic robot, magic guns, and a giant fucking laser while flying through the world at intense speeds? So, remember how many phases Master Core had? Yeah, Hades has just as many, with each one being more intense than the last, and all of them having amazing cinematography. The first phase has Pit and Hades squaring off in a plane with a neat red sky for atmosphere. After some witty banter that Uprising is known for, you both start barraging each other with lasers and fireballs, with Pit using the Great Sacred Treasure for his main firepower. Hades will also fire attacks from his cape, slam his fist so hard that he gets stuck, and go into a full-on sprint after Pit while donning his Devastation Ensemble, perfect for fun events like weddings and Armageddons. That on its own is really tense and cool. But as per Uprising standard, the characters are all making fun comments on the fight without destroying the tensity. After this phase, you proceed to fight inside a portal, gradually destroying parts of Hades' Devastation Ensemble until his lower half is severely damaged. After the Sacred Treasure goes into armor mode to block a shit ton of lasers, you move on to the upper half, ending that bit with Hades using a drill on his chest to destroy most of the mech, leaving Pit with only part of it, and the other part slicing Hades Darth Maul style. Being a god, this doesn't faze him as he escapes through the portal's exit to a cliffside. After yet another phase, this time shooting the blue attacks while avoiding the purple ones lest you take unavoidable damage, Hades teleports and completely destroys the Great Sacred Treasure sans its cannon. After landing safely on the ground, avoiding an instant game over in the process, you then have a limited amount of time to keep the constantly moving reticle on Hades to charge up an attack. Said attack being Medusa punching his fucking head off. Hades doesn't appreciate that, and kills Medusa in retaliation. Leaving one last phase, dodging attacks via Veridi flight while in critical condition until the aforementioned cannon charges, and you absolutely obliterate Hades' body. The way each of these phases escalate the action while also showing how both Hades and Pit are getting fatigued is amazing. And the land on the ground part isn't an issue since you really have to try in order to fuck it up. As per Sakurai standard, the music amplifies everything perfectly as well, making everything about the presentation top notch. The difficulty is also perfect. For one thing, no matter what intensity you pick, Hades will give you a fair challenge for your skill level, so it does feel like you earned this victory without having to get through some cheap move or section. On top of that, every single phase feels different from the last, giving the fight a good bit of variety in backdrops and strategies. And it's all of those aspects combined that make Hades my favorite final boss in gaming. And it's gonna be hard to top with how unique it is. This has been the Triforce of Doom. Peace out.